around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around and disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. Yeah,
get your boots ready. We're about to go on a trip where we wrestle, nobody settling or calling it quits. You're here for the grit, bet you this stuff is amazing. You're stumbling, welcome to the bump in the apron. Step into it, the hardest part of the ring. Here to bring fun, yeah, in this art he's king. It's the best thing, making sure you don't tap out. Don't go soft with the hardest podcast out. And it's not just another one, it's clear. Off the rest, in this content, none contest. Take the nonsense off the steps. You know it's nothing but pure gems when it's coming off the chest. Get it? Now it's time to sit and relax. Get your mind blown away, ain't no skipping this track. Have you paying more attention, no listening gap. Get everything I ever wanted, no giving it back. Yeah.
It's the hardest. Talk around on this.
What's up, everybody? Hardest part of the ring is back, and Diggity dog, we're brawling. We're brawling today, folks. Brawling. And I'm not talking about that one I struggle to take off. I'm talking about the kind of that happens in the autumn season here of brawls. Fall Brawl, 1994, from Roanoke, Virginia, just a hop, skip, and a jump away from old hard boy over here. Occurred on September 18th, 1994. And if you have been following the WCW series on the Apron Bump, you know that we are fresh off of Bash at the Beach 94. Bash at the Beach, which, by the way, if you haven't listened to that episode, I would strongly suggest you check that out, because that is, you can make an argument that that's the biggest event that WCW ever had. You can make that argument. Definitely the biggest event that they had up to that point, for sure. That there is no argument. No argument at all, simply because that is the in-ring debut of Hulk Hogan. Yeah, that's Hulk Hogan. The 24-inch pythons, dude. We're gonna eat your milk and drink your vitamins, brother. You ready for the red and yellow? You ready for your daughter not dating black guys? You ready, brother? Yeah, that one. That Hulk Hogan. You ready, brother? You ready? Well, go fuck yourself, dude, because I'm not here. No. Just putting you in the mindset here of what these Roanokeans are feeling watching this show, because they probably want Hulk Hogan. And they get Hulk Hogan via satellite. Haha. No boos will be had there, I'm sure. No boos from the crowd. Definitely not an overwhelming amount of boos when that was announced. But you can make that being said, right? I think it's been confirmed by Eric Bischoff himself that at this point, Hogan was only contracted for 4 matches per year. And, there's pros and cons to that. We do get into that in the podcast here as far as whether that was a good move or not. Personally, I think there is value in establishing a guy, especially like Hulk Hogan was at this time, establishing him as an attraction rather than a guy that you bring out every week and you just run him into the ground to the point where nobody cares about him anymore. Sting. And, so we get into that in the podcast. But other than Hogan, we got lots of shit happening. War Games! And we have, we have the Stud Stable, which is a team of Arn Anderson, Terry Funk, Bunkhouse Buck, and Colonel Parker, facing off against Dustin Rhodes, and the Nasty Boys. What a cast of characters. Man, but yeah, a lot of rednecks just hitting each other with metal objects and falling in between the rings. Or at least that was just one guy. But so we got War Games, we got Hogan, we got a moment that may have been the catalyst for Steve Austin leaving WCW and therefore changing the course of history. We have a really dramatic match between Sting and Vader, and Buff Bagwell's there too. So there's a little something for everybody here. But yeah, really fun episode here, and I had James from That 90s Wrestling Podcast to join me on here. You can find his podcast on all podcast platforms as well as YouTube. You can follow him at 90s Wrestling Pod on Twitter or at That 90s Wrestling Podcast on Instagram. All his info will be below in the description as always. And yeah, really great podcast over there by James, and doesn't even charge you a thing. So no, but it was a lot of fun having him on here. I appreciate the time that he took to watch the show and record this with me, as I do all my guests. So let's get right into it. WCW Fall Brawl 1994 with myself and James from That 90s Wrestling Podcast.
Mixed opinions on the show. Different, because I haven't watched it before. So different. So a lot of early 90s WCW, especially during this time, I never actually watched. So it was nice to see a show I haven't actually watched, because I had an idea how a couple of the results went, which I'll get into as well. But yeah, it's nice to see like a show what I haven't actually seen before.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about that, because I think we talked about it last time, but you were more of a WWF guy, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Always WWE. So I still today I am.
Right. Yeah. So I guess because really the whole like backstory to the show is Hulk Hogan, because he made his pay-per-view debut at the last pay-per-view, Bash at the Beach. So he's still very fresh to WCW. Just won the world title. I mean, it was pretty much his first match. Strap the rocket to him right away. I mean, you might as well. But you as a young WWF watcher, I would assume were a big Hulk. You're a big Hulkamaniac, weren't you?
Yeah, so Hulk Hogan. So yeah, so I was born in '89, and so I first started watching wrestling in '93, '92 maybe, when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and my father was a fan, so he had tapes like from '89 and '90. So I remember watching Hogan, but I was never the biggest Hogan fan, because I liked Hogan, and I loved Hogan when he was in Rocky III, Thunder Lips.
Right. Well, who didn't?
I watched it again the other night, and he was so fucking good in that film. But yeah, and but I was always like more for the Ultimate Warrior and the Macho Man, and when Bret Hart came along, that's where I started. That's where I pinned my flag, so you will. But yeah, but I suppose like for a lot of people who was up to date with the product at the time, like Hogan joining the competition, I can imagine it was such a big deal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so was it a big deal to you as somebody who, at least you might not have liked Hogan, but you're still very familiar with him, and he was still like he represented what WWF was at the time. So it must have been strict, because I was only 1 year old when this was happening, so I had no concept of it, honestly. But was it like a shock to you when Hogan went to WCW?
It's weird, because I didn't see his babyface run in WCW. When I realized Hogan was in WCW was when he was NWO.
Right.
And it's weird. Like, I'm trying to go back in time, because, like I said, I was a little bit behind on the videotapes and things like that. And like I remember, I had WrestleMania 9, and obviously that was kind of like one of Hogan's last appearances in WWE. And I noticed the difference. I was like, oh, where Hogan went, and I knew that he was doing movies like Three Ninja Kids at High Mountain Thunder, whatever it was called.
Mr. Nandy and Thunder in Paradise.
Yeah, and what was the other movie? What's the other movie done really early on?
I didn't know he had so many.
Suburban Commando with The Undertaker in.
That's right.
But I knew he'd done a lot of films, and when it was time to get like the video games, I remember my dad bringing me back home. It was for my birthday. I think I must have been about 8 or 9, might have been younger, and he brought back WCW NWO Revenge, which is one of the greatest wrestling games of all time. And I was
Yeah.
like, but it was weird because like, oh, Hulk Hogan's in this, oh, Bret Hart's in this, and it was all weird. Yeah, it must have been like '97, and oh, Jim Duggan for Night Arts in this.
Thought it was a crossover of some sort.
Yeah, like I had no idea, but then I started getting access to WCW, and so and I must have I must have watched WCW before I got that game because I remember Sting in that, and yeah, seeing him over in WCW was quite weird for me. But I missed this babyface run, if you can call it a babyface run, because we'll watch it, and
Right.
he was getting booed then.
Oh, don't worry. We're gonna get right into that, man. Yeah, because Hulk Hogan, I mean, even in WWF, people were starting to turn on him a little bit.
Yeah,
Because he had been on top for so long and he was kind of doing the same stuff over and over again. Naturally, people are going to get fatigued with that kind of stuff.
yeah,
So it's no wonder, he kind of comes to WCW and does more or less the same thing and keeps continuing those boos, even though it's under a different banner. But one thing I thought was interesting, and which I actually kind of liked, is that even though they brought Hogan in and they put the title on him right away, they still kind of treated him as an attraction rather
yeah.
than kind of a reoccurring guy, because I believe it was on 83 Weeks I listened to a while ago. Eric Bischoff said that Hogan was only contracted for 4 matches a year.
That's right.
So, and I kind of, because he's obviously, I mean, he's far and above anybody else that's on the roster at the time. So I think it's kind of cool to leave him, like whenever he does have a match, it would feel special. I mean, I think that's even a concept that maybe can be taken advantage of more today. Even like Roman Reigns is kind of in the same kind of ballpark, even more or less, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you could say so because you're exactly right with the. I mean, he had a sweet gig. It's kind of what you would say is the Brock Lesnar gig in a way. Only show up for so many matches a year, get paid stupid amounts of money, and putting in very little work. And like we'll get into that tonight, like when he's doing these promos, which I found hilarious. But yeah, he was an attraction. I mean, and I know he's a lot of people. He's not Mr. Popular at the minute, and I don't think he'll ever will be again. But back then, like obviously he was getting booed, but he was still Hulk Hogan. He's the biggest name of all time in wrestling. Without Hulk Hogan, there wouldn't be wrestling on TV, in my opinion. It'll be like the circus just going around towns and villages. That's what I personally believe it would be like. So we have to be thankful for Hogan. Obviously, he said some questionable things now, which I don't appreciate what he said, but that's for another topic. But end of the day, it was Hulk Hogan, and during the early 90s, he was still the main man in wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, I watched the few shows before Hogan got there, and it was rough, man. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen like Spring Stampede 94 or Slamboree 94, but man, you got like Barry Windham versus Ric Flair in the main event. You got a lot of Johnny B. Bad, even though we're not spared of him on this show either. But honestly, man, I think we should, while we're talking about Hogan, I know this kind of happens towards the end, but I really want to get into that promo.
I don't know if you found it the same way, but when I watched, I thought, why is Hulk Hogan so camp?
Dude, and for Hogan to be camp, that's saying something. First, okay. Well, so the show opens up with kind of like Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan laying out the show. Then they throw it to Mean Gene Okerlund, who basically gives the rundown for what is going to happen on this show for the audience that's there in attendance. Yeah. And he mentions that Hogan is going to be there via satellite. And wouldn't you know it, the crowd is not pleased. So many boos. They were not happy about that. But much later in the show, I mean, it's like right before the main event, I think, there is this via satellite promo happens. Yeah. And Hulk Hogan is at the gym because, he's Hulk Hogan. And is a really nice bold shot of Hogan sitting at the shoulder press machine or whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
he finishes a set. Jimmy Hart's there for some reason. He didn't need to be there. And then Hogan grabs a phone, which You're a little older than I am, so maybe you can answer me this. Was there ever a point in time where gyms had hardline phones right next to workout machines?
Not to my knowledge.
Well,
I'll tell you
you
what I
go
did find. Sorry, I'll tell you what I did find funny though. Did you enjoy seeing Jimmy Hart's T-shirt with his sleeve rolled up,
I
show off his,
didn't like it.
to
I had
show
the opposite of enjoyment. But what
to,
was it?
to show off his muscles?
To be fair, anybody standing next to Hulk Hogan is gonna look pretty flaccid, I think.
Yeah,
But yeah, man, so the whole thing here is Hogan's in the gym. He's trying to portray, working hard, getting prepared for his next match, whenever that is, and he's gonna face Ric Flair, or I guess the challenge hasn't been made thus yet, but basically a Clash of Champions, which was a few weeks before this. He was going to face Ric Flair, but he got attacked by a masked man,
yeah,
mysterious masked man, who I think was Brutus the Barber Beefcake eventually.
all right.
But then, so he attacked Hogan's leg at the Clash. But Hogan still ended up facing Flair that night, but ended up losing via countout. So he retained his title, but he lost. So now we have a situation where Ric Flair is kind of claiming that he's the real world champion, even though technically Hogan is still champion. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. So we're back here. Hogan's in the gym. He's sweaty, hardline phone. He calls, I forget if he calls Flair or Flair calls him, but him and Flair start talking on the phone. And Ric Flair, he's sitting there at a table in Vegas at some bar. The classic heel is partying, babyface is working out, working all that shit. And dude, this promo had to be at least 10 minutes long. And
Yeah, it was.
it really just ultimately was, hey, I challenge you at the next pay-per-view to a career versus career match.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it. I don't know. What did you think about the whole thing?
Like I said, it was just so camp. I loved it when he was talking to one of Ric Flair's accomplices, one of the ladies he slept with.
Accomplices.
Yeah, and he was,
Yeah.
and she was like, "Oh, I forgot what she said exactly, but he was like, she's like, yeah, he's been getting plenty of workout." And he's like, "Oh yeah, brother, I bet you've been giving work with those mashed potato arms." And he was, "You've been working this way, haven't you?" And I was like, "Why is Hogan so camp tonight?"
Yeah.
And I loved it. And it's the first time I've ever seen Hogan. Well, it's probably not the first time, but a dueling promo. Like Ric Flair, treated Hogan like he was a bum. He was like, "Yeah, you wait there," and he actually made Hogan wait for him while Flair's talking to all these beautiful women and that. I found it hilarious. Like Ric Flair just schooled him so much, and my favorite bit at the end. After the call when Hogan was like, "Shh, don't tell anyone, Gene, but the knees all better." I'm like, "You're on fucking pay-per-view, Hogan. I'll come see you."
Because like you said, there are periods where Hogan was waiting for Flair to talk, but he was still sitting there being Hulk Hogan. You know what I mean? This whole promo, he's still, "Well, let me tell you something, dude." All that shit for the whole thing. I think if nothing else, I applaud Hogan for having the energy. He was sweating, but I think all that sweat is from him being Hulk Hogan for that long.
Yeah, it was for what I know it was 10 minutes. To be thankful, I was actually thankful it was a long promo because I knew that the War Games match was after this, and I was looking at the War Games counter. I thought, right, there's 40 minutes of this War Games match. Right, there's only 30 minutes of this War Games match. So I was actually thankful for this promo because
Dude, yeah.
Because it was fun. It was camp. I actually enjoyed it. It was one of me. It's Hogan being Hogan and Flair being Flair. But for what it was, I actually it was probably one of the highlights of this show. I actually did enjoy it. But yeah, it was you couldn't help but just laugh when you was watching it.
Exactly. Yeah, it was entertaining, if nothing else.
Yeah.
And I guess that's all that matters in the end. But so yeah, that happens at the end. But let's circle back to the beginning. Opening match, we have the WCW television title on the line. And as per usual, I don't know if you're familiar, but every goddamn WCW pay-per-view starts out with Johnny B. Bad.
I've heard it. I used to listen to. I don't really get. Now I do podcasts on myself, and I listen to your podcast and friends' podcast now. I don't really get much time to listen to what happened when or 83 weeks that much anymore because I rather support my fellow content creators if that makes sense.
Yeah, same here.
But when when I did used to listen to it, like, and I used to run through these WCW shows, yeah, Johnny B. Bad was like it was Johnny B. Bad and DDP for a lot of them.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, it'd be a little longer before DDP figured out what his fucking gimmick was. But so yeah, we have Johnny B. Bad versus Lord Steven Regal, who is the champ here. What'd you think of his powdered wig?
Yeah, I love it how Tony Schiavone, who I don't like, I love it how he thought that the English actually plays cricket in a wig. I'm like, yes, Tony, because that makes sense, doesn't it? A powdered fucking wig when a ball's going 60 miles towards your head.
I love the idea that Tony Schiavone is making like a kind of a side remark about cricket, and you, like a true British person, are getting all heated watching this. Like, you can't play cricket in a wig.
And I don't even fucking like cricket, which is the irony. But yeah, it was good. And did you know who Sir William was, who accompanied him?
I don't.
He was quite a big name in Memphis, Bill Dundee, and he wrestled a lot around the circuit with like Jerry Lawler. But I would imagine you was an Attitude Era kid. So his son was Jamie Dundee. Do you remember Nation of Domination?
Yep.
Do you remember PG-13 who used to rap to the ring for him?
Oh, I don't. That's like, I think that's like right before I started watching.
This is like the beginning of Nation. This is like
Right.
late 96, 97. But they used to be like these two little small white guys, and they used to rap towards the ring for the Nation Domination. They looked so out of... But then again, this was the Nation when we had Crush and Savio, so it wasn't like an all-black male like faction. They were still discovering what they wanted to be. And like there was these two like 12-year-olds, and they used to rap towards the ring. Well, Jamie Dundee, who was part of the tag team, he was actually son of Bill Dundee, who's Sir William. But yeah, he was actually like a big name in the Memphis territory. But one thing we did forget to mention was Johnny B. Baddy's glitter gun, and I couldn't help but the way he got it positioned, I can't help but think it was a euphemism for something else.
There is so much going on with Johnny B. Bad. I like glitter, pyro. It's like coming out of his shoulders. There's more pyro behind him.
Yeah.
Glitter. It's like all over the floor during the whole. It's so much, and he's so like he's like beyond tan. Like he's.
I mean, he's like they say he looks like Little Richard. That's what the gimmick is based on. And
man, I don't think that's okay nowadays, is it?
I mean, any more tan. Sorry if this is controversial, but I'm saying it as a comedy. Any more of like bronze or tan, he would basically be doing blackface.
Dude, I said the exact same thing in my last podcast with him on it, and it's like, God, man, this is like, what are you doing? But whatever it is, I mean, you know, all that ridiculous stuff, he's still looking chiseled as fuck.
Oh yeah, I mean, great look. And like when WWE signed him, like they didn't realize they couldn't have the Johnny B. Bad character. And but yeah, man, he was shredded. And for what it was, I thought this was a really good match. I don't know if that was because big part of it was due to Regal, who's one of the most underrated workers of all time. But I actually really enjoyed this match, believe it or not.
I've actually been watching a good amount of Regal recently, and there's just like, you know, he didn't really have those matches, those like 5-star matches generally, but there was like all of his little things that he does.
Yeah.
Like the mannerisms, his facials, the way he walks. He walks like an asshole.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's how all you British people walk, but
no.
you all wear powdered wigs to the grocery store and shit, right? That's how I imagine is going on over there.
I love it when I speak to Americans because like I forgot I mentioned this to you the other day. I think I had like a British wrestler on, and I'm like, I love how Americans think we all speak the Queen's English. And I'm thinking, let them spend a week up in Burnley or Manchester and see what the real UK is like. It's not pretty.
Hey, I've seen Euro Trip. Okay, I'm familiar.
Great movie.
But anyways, great movie and a great match here, as you said. Johnny B. Bad, he was always opening these shows because he could always give you at least an okay match. Really give energy, pump the crowd up a little bit, and like you said, really technical on both sides, really. Because you know that's Regal's whole thing, and Johnny B. Bad was trying to match him, and ultimately, Regal goes for a European uppercut. And then Johnny B. Bad counters into a backslide pin and gets the 1, 2, 3. and Johnny B. Bad wins his first singles title in WCW. Yeah, really good stuff. Yeah, like you said, really good match. And I think Regal after this goes on to form a team called the Blue Bloods with Jean-Paul Levesque.
Whatever happened to that guy?
I was gonna make the same joke. But yeah, so that'll be interesting to see. But what happens after this? So yeah, after that we get a video package, which is what we talked about earlier about the masked man attacking Hogan, so setting the stage for the promo at the end of the show.
One thing I wrote down, and I couldn't help but think of it, but you know when Hogan was making his entrance and he had Jimmy Hart and he had Brutus Beefcake with him, like his entourage, for some reason I couldn't help but think of Cody Rhodes.
Really?
It's like pyros, he's got his entourage around him. I'm thinking, well, I know where Cody Rhodes has got his new gimmick from.
Please, for the love of God, don't let Cody Rhodes know you compared him to Hulk Hogan.
Well, I've just had an email from AEW, so I hope he doesn't hear it.
Man, last time I had you on, I think Nick Aldis messaged you, and now you're getting messaged by AEW. I think at what point do you start giving me credit?
Oh man, you're my lucky charm, to be honest. So I'm definitely giving you all the credit.
We send people to the moon here on the Apron Bump. But goddamn. So speaking of otherworldly, we have Cactus Jack versus Kevin Sullivan in a loser leaves WCW match. So Cactus Jack, I mean, previous to this show, he had been in a lot of street fights and crazy, really like ahead of its time kind of matches, taking crazy bumps, sick weapons shots and all that. That was kind of becoming his thing.
Yeah.
And I think, if rumors are true, that's kind of what led to him getting let go from WCW eventually, is that he was being too reckless and stuff like that, because he would go on to ECW after this and carve a whole new story over there. And then so yeah, this is obviously his last match, spoiler alert, but the match itself, you have Mick Foley and Kevin Sullivan in 1994. It's pretty much exactly what you would expect. It's the one spot that got me, man, was where I think Foley undid the mat on the floors, so he exposed the concrete. He's gonna do like an elbow drop onto Kevin Sullivan from the second rope to the outside, but Kevin Sullivan gets up and just throws Cactus Jack from the second rope to the concrete floor. Brutal.
Yeah, it was. This was not a pretty match. It was, like you said, just brutal, and you can see like the pre-Hogan and like current Hogan days of WCW, like when Hogan came in, and we'll see it like during the show, like he brought a lot of his friends, but the style of WCW completely changed, and like Cactus Jack just didn't fit in with this new era. So but. Yeah, a few crazy bumps in this match.
Yeah, I mean, this is also fresh off of Foley losing his ear.
That's right,
a few months after. So I did like the whole deal where Sullivan was like targeting his ear, because that's like a real thing that happened, and it made sense in the context of this match. But towards the end, they have a steel chair that they're fighting over. I should also mention that Dave Sullivan is out there with Kevin. So Kevin Sullivan has the chair. He's in the ring with the chair. He's about to hit Cactus Jack with it, but Dave Sullivan grabs the chair. He's like, no, don't hit him with it. And then as they're like fighting with the chair, the Sullivans are, Cactus Jack tries to attack Kevin, but Kevin moves out of the way, hits Dave, and then Kevin is able to capitalize by rolling up Cactus Jack for the 1-2-3, and a pretty brutal but quick match, and kind of an unceremonious exit for Foley here, I think.
Yeah, like I watched it, and quick, and like afterwards I was like, wasn't really that special. Like when I saw Cactus Jack come out, I thought, oh, this should be all right. And I know Kevin Sullivan, like his matches with Benoit, which they were pretty brutal matches and definitely worth a watch. That's if people can stomach a Chris Benoit match these days. But they are pretty hard hitting matches. But yeah, it was just like it was like a blur. I was like, whoa, that's like Foley gone out of WCW, never to return again. And and obviously like you said, made his way towards ECW and done some great stuff over there before finally making it to the big time, I suppose.
Yeah, it's crazy knowing in hindsight the legend that they had, and they just didn't know at the time. I mean, how could you? I mean, I don't think
Well,
anybody would have guessed the success Foley would go on to have.
I mean, we'll go through the show and like even the next couple of segments, we'll see like the people what we'll see who got released rather straight away or within a few months, and how they went on to become in about 2 years' time even.
Yeah, that's why I love like kind of revisiting this time period, is because you got all of that throughout the whole industry. You know, you got WCW going to WWF and vice versa, and then you got ECW there with, as a kind of a middle ground between those two. It's just a really volatile time in wrestling. It's really interesting to see, like, even like Dustin Rhodes, Steve Austin, among others that are just gonna be flipping back and forth and becoming huge stars.
It's we could do with more of it these days, really. I mean, I know AEW is about now, and there hasn't really been, like, in my opinion, like the WWE stars what's gone over to AEW. Like, besides obviously the late Brody Lee, he was doing really well before he sadly passed away. And Moxley's done well. But when you look at Miro, like Rusev, I'm thinking he's no better off than what he was WWE. And Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona, it doesn't get talked about, but like they completely botched him. He had literally like 2 matches and then he got sacked straight away.
Yeah, I think it's what it's doing is really kind of showing, because a lot of guys go to WWE, don't see a lot of success there, and then kind of blame it on the business and blame it on the powers that be. So when they get these opportunities, that's their chance to shine. And when they maintain, like how, like you brought up Zack Ryder, like, yeah, maybe it was the booking, maybe not, but I personally have been, pretty indifferent on Zack Ryder.
Yeah.
And I think with the roster that AEW has, I don't know if he is someone that deserves the spotlight more than others they have.
Yeah, I think it's weird because Impact in a way is kind of like the ECW today in a way, and AEW is your WCW. They probably don't want to hear that, but they are. A WWE, and I feel like Impact's been using the ex-WWE stars better, like Eric Young and even Brian Myers. He's actually looking okay over there, and Gianna Perazzo is Knockouts champion. I actually feel like they've been doing a better job with the ex-WWE stars than what AEW has been.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, I don't disagree, but I think Impact has less talent than AEW does, so it's probably more competition.
Yeah,
like within the company on the AEW side, but yeah, definitely agree. People like Deonna Purrazzo, Eric Young, even like Rich Swann, who people might probably at this point forget that he was an ex-WWE guy, the world champion over there. So yeah, I love what they're all doing over there. But man, I don't know how you transition from Impact to Bunkhouse Buck. I just wanted to note this backstage segment right here because, man, it was hilarious. It was the Stud Stable, which is comprised of Colonel Parker, Bunkhouse Buck, Terry Funk, Ming, and Arn Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
Just a lot of nonsensical babbling in this promo. I could listen to Terry Funk and Bunkhouse Buck talk all day, I think.
Yeah, when I did see these guys, I thought, right, you ain't winning. I didn't know who they was facing in War Games. I knew it was Dusty and Dustin, but I forgot he was teaming with. But when I saw this group, I was like, yeah, you ain't winning tonight.
So you're telling me that they didn't properly articulate what their intentions were?
No.
Well, I want to get out of the cage. Dustin Rhodes. It's 5 minutes of that.
I'll tell you who Haku or Meng reminded me of as well. Have you ever seen was you a Jean-Claude Van Damme fan growing up?
I've seen a few of his movies.
Did you ever see AWOL, Absent Without Leave? It's also called Lionheart as well, it's called.
I think I've just seen the Blood Sports.
Right. Anyway, he fights this big guy at the end. And basically, he leaves the army to support his brother's died. So he goes over to support his brother's family. And to get money, he fights. And he fights this guy at the end. And he's a spitting image of Meng at the end of this movie. And I couldn't help but think of that guy in Bloodsport.
Meng, yeah, he does look like an 80s, 90s villain.
Yeah.
He had a cool look, though, I must say.
Oh, he looked awesome.
When I see him, I associate him with his 2001 tag team with Rikishi. So
Oh, that was a great time.
good stuff. Good stuff. But after that, we have so the scheduled match was a U.S. title match. Steve Austin versus Ricky Steamboat.
I was excited when that got announced.
Have you seen their match at Bash at the Beach?
Yeah, I actually did because on WWE 2K16 they done the Stone Cold career thing, and and you play that match, and I went back and watched it, and it was a really good match. So when this got announced, I thought, oh, awesome! I like Steamboat and I love Austin. This should be good. And then I'll let you carry on and explain.
So they had their match at Bash at the Beach where Steve Austin won. But then I guess at Clash of the Champions a few weeks after that, they had a rematch, and Ricky Steamboat won the title from Austin.
Yeah.
But in that match, Ricky Steamboat suffered a back injury that would pretty much end his career.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is very unfortunate. But here at Fall Brawl, he comes out, and obviously he can't compete because of the injuries, so he basically has to give away the title, but he doesn't vacate it. He comes out to the ring. Nick Bockwinkel's out there as like the commissioner. He brings out Steamboat. Steamboat has the title. And then Nick Bockwinkel basically tells Steamboat that he has to relinquish the title and that he's given the title to Steve Austin. So Steve Austin is now the champion.
Yep.
And first of all, I just love, it's always fun watching Steve Austin in his early stages. But I love how like cartoonishly like Austin was.
He was so good. I was watching it, and you could see because later on when he done interview, when he done promos for like Vince McMahon, he would try and fuck with like McMahon's jacket and things like that. And obviously we've got hindsight, but when you're watching it, you can see them little mannerisms in there. And yeah, it was so funny and cartoonish. He was like, where? Oh, you have to leave and things. He was so good.
Yeah, and then he gets the title. He's celebrating, like you said. He's doing the fist to the eye, crying thing at Steamboat. He's jumping all over the ring. He just won the Super Bowl or whatever the cricket title is, for you British people there. And
Ashes.
Exactly. So Bockwinkel informs Austin that while he is the champion, he's still going to be defending it tonight against Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
When the theme hit, I was like, no, please, no. And then I'm going through my head. I thought, no, this isn't the match, is it? No, this can't be the one. And you can't even call it a match. And when it would happen, I was like, oh, fuck, it is.
You're like, oh, is it the Patriot? Is it Mr. America?
Yeah.
But nope. Yeah, people were expecting Austin versus Steamboat, but they get Austin versus 1994 Jim Duggan, which is man. And then the match happens, if you can call it that. So the bell rings. Austin's still like yelling at Bockwinkel, like, no, you can't make me. Or I can't do a Stone Cold, but he's still jumping around the ring. He's upset, and then he's all flustered, and then the bell rings. And then Jim Duggan, he's like a kind of like a backdrop or like some sort of tackle.
Yeah.
Nails Austin, pins him within like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And Austin loses the title, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan is your WCW US champion. Yeah.
My reaction was fucking bollocks.
I wasn't really pumped to see a long match between those two anyways, so I was like, wow, it's whatever.
It's crazy. And don't get me wrong, I like Hacksaw, okay? We all grew up with Hacksaw and that, but this is 1994 Hacksaw, and Hacksaw's always looked old. And I'm thinking, how old was he? And I looked. I've done some research for your podcast. I did. And Jim Duggan, believe it or not, he was only 40. I thought he was older. But Austin's like 29, 30-year-old. And I'm like, this is what this was like Hogan bringing his best friends, bringing in, we'll see him later on, the Nasty Boys, bringing in Jim Duggan. And you've got Steve Austin, who's been doing really well in WCW before this, Hollywood Blondes, matches with Dustin Rhodes at Starrcade, 2 out of 3 Falls matches, the War Games the year before, and in the Dangerous Alliance. He's been doing really good, and you let Hacksaw go over him, and it's like, why? Just can someone like don't get me wrong, got a pop from the crowd, but Americans, if you just chant USA, you just go mental over it. So, I could go over there and chant USA, and you'll all support me. You're just patriotic. So he got a pop from the crowd, but man, like Eric Bischoff was in control during these days. I think I'm pretty sure he was.
Yeah, he was.
And I like Bischoff, right? But let's be honest, he had one good idea with the NWO. Besides that, what did he do? And this is Eric Bischoff.
Yeah, it's crazy because, and especially considering, Austin, I think him and Duggan had a feud after this.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it for Austin and WCW. I think he got injured at some point.
Yeah.
And that's, he got released during that rehab and all that stuff. So this is pretty much, for all intents and purposes, this is the end of Stunning Steve Austin here in WCW.
Yeah, and within 4 years, in pretty much 4 years' time, he'll become the biggest superstar on the planet. So crazy.
Man. Yeah, watching this back with hindsight, you have Mick Foley just getting shit canned for no reason.
Yeah.
You got Austin getting buried. If only they knew. They knew.
Even if they never used him, even if they just kept him under contract, you know what I mean? And WWE, I mean, who would take, when I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, if they never had Austin, thinking, who would have took Austin's place? And the only person who they was building up as the next babyface was probably Ken Shamrock, but he could never do what Austin done. So even if they just kept Austin under contract, just keep him away from WWE, but wow.
Change the whole world.
Yeah, it's just like, wow, like they didn't really, no wonder they went out of business end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have the benefit of hindsight, but yeah, if WWE doesn't have Austin in the late 90s, for one, they don't have him. The Rock probably doesn't get over as much as he did.
Yeah.
But everyone that Austin built up with him, you wouldn't have that. You obviously wouldn't have the Austin McMahon rivalry. It would have changed the course of everything. Like you said, even if because that's kind of what he did when he went to ECW after this. He was injured, but he just cut promos, and he cut great promos. So he could have done something similar in WCW, I think, but I don't even know if they knew his potential on the mic at this point.
No, it's just crazy to think of when you think about they didn't realize what they had. And even we mentioned him earlier, John Paul Levesque, they let him go.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of guys that would go on to blossom into huge stars, we got some Buff Bagwell next.
Yay.
We have the team of Stars and Stripes versus Pretty Wonderful. Stars and Stripes is Marcus Bagwell and the Patriot versus Pretty Wonderful, who is Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma. So, first of all, it's hilarious seeing a young Buff Bagwell here. He's not that much different, just less facial hair, but that for some reason just changes his whole look. And I was going into this match because the previous pay-per-view I watched, Bash at the Beach, Pretty Wonderful was in a tag match against Cactus Jack and Kevin Sullivan for the title. And that was one of the worst matches I've ever seen. So I was like, man, are Paul Orndorff and Paul Roma, are they just a shitty team, or are they, wrong place, wrong time kind of thing?
Yeah.
But I honestly, I enjoyed this match quite a bit.
Yeah, I like Paul Orndorff. Obviously he was at the beginning of Hulkamania and had a really good feud with Hulk Hogan, a great steel cage match. So I've always been obviously this is quite a bit after his heyday, but I enjoyed him during this match. And Paul Roma, funny enough, I've just finished reviewing what did I just review? SummerSlam 91, and that was actually his last match in WWE. And I always thought he was a sound wrestler. Obviously he's gone on to become the West Force Horseman member, which I dispute. I personally think it's Mongo McMichael, but that's a debate for another day.
Not Virgil.
Virgil. Was Virgil in the Four Horsemen?
Oh, sorry, I'm thinking of the NWO.
Oh, right. Oh, no, definitely would be Virgil. Can you imagine
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it, though.
Could you imagine Virgil as a Four Horsemen?
Hey, it's never too late.
But, well, AEW might bring it back and he might be in it. But yeah, they was actually a pretty sound tag team. And Marcus Bagwell, Buff Bagwell, I liked Buff Bagwell back in like the Nitro days. I enjoyed Buff Bagwell, and the Patriot. He didn't have a bad little run in WWE in '97. Had a few matches with Brett. So and yeah, it was actually a pretty good match. Well, I say that because when I started watching it last night, it was pretty late and I actually fell asleep.
Good sign.
But I watched the second half of the pay-per-view today, and I watched it, and it was actually a good match. So I was actually pleasantly surprised by it.
Yeah, pretty a simple formula of a tag team match, but really executed well. We got 4 legitimate athletes in there, which is kind of a differentiates themselves from a lot of the other people on this card. They all looked great, and they were able to move around. A lot of good spots here. There's a part where Bagwell's on the outside, and Orndorff just takes it's like a case full of ice and dumps it on him.
Yeah,
just for no reason, just to be an asshole. And then back in the ring, you have Patriot and Roma going at it. Patriot hits a full Nelson slam onto Paul Roma, and he pins him, but Patriot isn't legal. Bagwell is.
Yeah.
But on the outside, Orndorff has Bagwell and gives him a pile driver on the floor, brutal looking, and just rolls Bagwell into the ring. Roma pins him, just kind of rolls over and puts his arm over on him. And that gets them 1, 2, 3. Pretty Wonderful gets the win here and retain the tag team titles. So good little match here. Did these teams kind of stick around for a while? I guess you weren't watching at the time, so maybe don't know.
I think because funny enough, I was gonna make a video about Paul Roma. I didn't end up making it, but I was actually looking to these matches, and I know these carry on the feud probably to the next Clash of Champions, but then eventually they just split up afterwards.
Yeah. As far as the tag division now in WCW, I'm just kind of biding time before Harlem Heat gets there.
Oh yeah.
But then after this, we have a triangle match, not a triple threat match, a triangle match. It's basically a number.
Then you get the promo with Dusty Rhodes and the Nasty Boys.
Oh, was that after this? I didn't take any note of it, but please.
Oh no, it was just like
Brian. It was more babbling, wasn't it?
Oh, Brian Knobbs was just really coked up.
Yeah.
My favorite thing was Dusty Rhodes' T-shirt, "Nasty Dream," and my question is, when's the last time you had a nasty dream?
Oh, what time is it? 12 hours ago.
But it was just basically a coked up promo by Brian Knobbs, and it was quite fun.
There was a lot of coked up people on this show. Paul Roma, not to revert back to Paul Roma, but he was just watching him made me have a twitch.
Oh, did you see him after he hit that elbow drop? And he was really excited for that elbow drop. He was like, "Ooh, yeah!" And he spent a good 10 seconds to himself, smiling like a Cheshire cat.
Yeah, it's like he's getting electrocuted in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
We have a number 1 contenders match, triangle match, to see who will face the world champion at Starrcade, I believe.
That's right.
And we have Vader versus Sting versus the Guardian Angel. And for those who are unaware, the Guardian Angel is Big Boss Man.
Yep. Another one of Hogan's friends.
Yep. And so this fucking drove me crazy here. So they had 3 people in this match, but the premise was that 2 people would start, and whoever won the first match would face the third person. So it's essentially a gauntlet match. But the way they choose who gets the bye, the fucking coin toss. So I didn't really pay that much attention to the coin toss. I'm thinking now, I'm wondering how they did it with 3 people.
Yeah.
I'm actually very confused. I'm going to need to rewatch that. But yeah, the ref flips the coin, he panics, he drops the coin, he has to like find it on the floor. Hilarious. But Sting ends up receiving the bye, so that leaves Vader and Guardian Angel to face off, and basically the winner of that will face Sting.
Yeah.
Which is odd. You would think like the two baby faces would face each other and then the heel would like pick up the bones.
I'm just surprised they had Vader basically start off and like carry on all the way through. I was actually surprised by that and like his stamina.
Yeah. I mean, let's get into it. So him and Angel, they have like a 7-minute match or so. It's mostly Vader dominating. But towards the end, Guardian Angel gets some offense in. He hits the Boss Man Slam. But of course, because it's WCW, the ref is distracted. I think he takes a bump at some point. And Harley Race gets in, gives Guardian Angel a headbutt. And then Vader hits the Vader bomb, pins Guardian Angel. And so that pretty much eliminates Boss Man from this. And now we got Vader versus Sting. What do you think of that first little bit? And were you a fan of this Guardian Angel gimmick?
Not really. I did enjoy, and this is one of my biggest gripe with managers these days. Like Harley Race, like he was a manager, and he actually was a manager who actually done stuff. Like he headbutted Bossman. I'll call him Bossman. He headbutted Bossman. I think he does the same to Sting later on. I might be wrong. But like he actually interfered on behalf. And when I see managers these days, they don't do anything. Like for example, when Tully Blanchard is accompanying FTR, he doesn't do anything. And I'm like, what's the point of you being there? You was a good wrestler back in the day, but you wasn't even the main member of the Horsemen. And same when I see like Jake Roberts with Lance Archer, which Jake Roberts is pretty damn old these days, or Arn Anderson, he doesn't really do much these days. So I actually miss the days where managers actually done something. Going a bit side topic, I just interviewed Ricardo Rodriguez, who was Del Rio's announcer. And when you look at his career, and we was talking about, like, he done a lot of bumps, like even off a fucking ladder at the TLC event. And that's what I miss, like managers who actually do stuff instead of just like standing there and just trying to take something away from the talent.
Yeah, because even like Sir William at the beginning, there was a spot where he took his cane and like tried to give it to Regal for leverage on a pin at some point.
Yeah,
I agree. Stuff like that. And it's interesting because Guardian Angel, that's more of like it's a very local, like New York thing in America. And it's funny because my Bash at the Beach review, my guest was from New York. And it really resonated with him because the Guardian Angels were kind of like not vigilantes, but kind of like a local like unit that was like protecting people from crime. And I mean, people that grew up in New York in the early mid 90s, they probably associate the Guardian Angels with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you're anywhere else in the country or beyond the United States, you probably have no emotional ties to what Guardian Angels are. So
yeah, never had a clue.
And that kind of seems like what the case was with you. But so Angels eliminated. So now we have Vader versus Sting. So Sting makes another entrance for some reason. I don't know why they even bothered doing that.
Yeah, that was weird.
And they go on, Sting and Vader, to have a really fucking good match, I think. Even though they seem to get gassed at some point. Yeah. There are a lot of cool spots. I mean, you forget how strong Sting was. He was just throwing Vader all over the place.
Yeah, there was a point where he just hit like a standing suplex to Vader, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, because there's only so much he can help with that. Vader can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like standing suplexes, German suplexes. You can really tell that they're calling this in the ring. Because there's kind of spots that were kind of just, it didn't really flow well at certain points, but it was still entertaining to watch.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts was Bobby Heenan's, because like you said, Sting is hitting suplexes, German suplexes, superplexes. He's hitting all these moves, and Bobby Heenan's like, he's used everything. Next, he's going to need to use a sledgehammer. And all I kept thinking was that there was a young John Paul Levesque in the back background thinking, I like that idea.
It's got credit Bobby Heenan for that.
Yeah.
So they wrestle for like 15 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
And that brings that was the time limit. But then there has to be a winner. So they go into a 5-minute overtime. And they wrestle for 5 more minutes, gassed as hell. And then that 5 minutes elapses. So now they go to sudden death. And when they first announced that, I was like, what's the difference between sudden death and overtime?
Yeah.
Very convoluted at first when I first heard it. But what sudden death was, and I think I actually might like it, it's the first person that gets knocked down loses. Which it's kind of silly, but it's also, while you're watching it, it's like really tense and really like dramatic.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. And so they're in this sudden death. Vader is just clobbering, like potatoing the hell out of Sting with these like forearm shots. And Sting's not going down. He's up against the ropes. He's up against the corner. Sting fights back. He hits him with a couple shots. Ultimately, Sting is able to get Vader to get knocked down, knocks him out. But wouldn't you know it, the ref is distracted by Boss Man, he has been fucking 20 minutes since he lost, but he chose now to come out and attack Harley Race.
Yeah.
And so the ref is distracted. He's trying to get him out of there, so he doesn't see Vader fall. Vader ends up getting back up and is able to knock out Sting. But now the ref, lo and behold, is now watching the action. You see Sting get knocked down and awards Vader the victory here. Very, very rough around the edges this match was, but really fun watch and definitely had some emotion to it, I think.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. But when it started doing the overtime thing, there must be a winner. Like that at that point, it's like, oh man, why have they? They should have just kept this just a straight match. And if they had to, because like people say, yeah, well, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels had overtime, but I'm thinking, well, that made sense because it was an Iron Man match, and
Yeah,
they didn't expect it to be 0-0 at the end. But if there had to be a winner for this match, don't put a time limit on the match. But it was fun. One of the things I did write down. Did you notice that when Vader like pulled down the straps and like it was riding up his back, he looked like he was wearing like a really big thong? I couldn't.
Face.
It's a vision I didn't want in my head, but when I'm looking at him, like it looks like he's wearing a thong.
Maybe he was. Let Vader do what he wants to do, okay?
I kept having flashbacks to Samoa Joe's G-string in TNA. He would watch. It must be a thing wrestlers wear, but he was wrestling a match and like this G-string was riding up his ass. I was like, oh god. I wanted to see Angelina Love and Velvet Sky, not Samoa Joe.
Right. Well, that's just you, okay? People have different preferences.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a good match, and like Sting. When I'm watching Sting, I couldn't help but think of John Cena because you can tell there was a similar sort of style, like these big, strong guys who would take a beating, but come and hit these power moves. I couldn't help but think of John Cena watching this match, but I love Sting. Like I've always been a big fan of Sting, so I enjoyed watching him. And Vader was so great as well. Like he got gassed, but then again, he wrestled 2 matches back to back, so I'll give him the benefit of a doubt. But yeah, it was a good match, and yeah, like I didn't appreciate the stuff at the end with the overtime and stuff, but it still didn't take too much away from the match.
Yeah, I agree. I think Guardian Angel's presence was a bit unnecessary. It could have just been a straight one-on-one match, I think.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the issue of Vader being so gassed at the end, but still a fun watch at the end of it. But after that is we get that promo that we talked about with Hogan and Flair. Crowd boos Hogan. People hate Hogan. And we move on from that. Then we get to the main event, War Games. So this...
War Games.
War Games!
Yeah, that's a very good accent.
So I practice it every morning. That's how I get it today. So this is like the first original quote-unquote War Games match I've ever seen, actually. Right. Because the only ones I've seen are the NXT ones. Right. So it was kind of cool to see the origins of it, even though it was several years after it was originated. But the build up here. So the basic premise is we have Dusty Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes, and the Nasty Boys versus Bunkhouse Buck, Terry Funk, Arn Anderson, and Colonel Parker, the stud stable. So I guess the origins of this storyline is that Dustin Rhodes and Bunkhouse Buck had an issue. Bunkhouse Buck was managed by Colonel Parker, and I guess still is at this point. So they had an issue. They had a few matches at pay-per-views, bunkhouse matches, bull rope matches and all that shit. And then eventually, because Bunkhouse Buck is kind of coming out on the losing end of all these matches, he recruits Terry Funk basically to help him out. I don't really know why Terry Funk is in this, like what his motivations are for this, other than he's just a crazy old man. So you got Bunkhouse Buck and Terry Funk together. Arn Anderson comes into the picture as a result of the last pay-per-view. So Dustin Rhodes basically recruited Arn Anderson to be his tag team partner to face Bunkhouse Buck, and Terry Funk.
Right.
And to the surprise of no one, Arn Anderson turned on Dustin Rhodes and joined the stud stable. So now we have the stud stable is established. Dustin Rhodes gets his dad to get back into the fold. There's a great promo on, I think, WCW Saturday Night. It's like a really famous promo that I need to probably go back and watch, but they showed some highlights on this show.
Yeah, it was quite good. I remember it.
Yeah. And then I don't know where the Nasty Boys come into the picture, but I'm not going to ask any questions. I'm just going to accept it. So
my favorite part, I don't know if it was in a bar or something, and he's like, Dusty, I didn't know you're nasty enough. And they start beating up these random patrons in the bar. I think it was a bar. But during this whole time, there was one guy behind Dusty, and he was sat down in a lounge chair, and he was so relaxed, and he was like, he just didn't give a shit what was happening around him.
Right. Poor Dusty. But so yeah, the build was really good. It's it's been building for several months, and that's where we have War Games now is kind of how they're going to culminate this whole thing, even though I think it continues after this, but we'll ignore that. Yeah. So again, another coin toss to see who has the advantage in this match. If you see modern day War Games matches, they're usually determined, at least the past couple of years, they've been determined by ladder matches on TV shows leading up to this. But here it's just that we're going to flip a coin and fuck you. We'll see. And
he fucked up doing that as well. Poor Pee-wee, he dropped it.
Yeah, these refs just don't know how to flip coins.
Oh, Nick Patrick, I forgot to mention it, but during that Sting match, he can't fucking count. I don't know if I'm so conditioned to WWE, but you get the big arms. 1, 2. He's tapping. He's like 1, 2.
I tweeted out as I was watching this match something about I hate Nick Patrick's shitty cadence. Yeah. That was a result of me watching that match. It's very, like you said, very just light. He just like tilts his wrist instead of his whole arm.
Yeah.
Very quiet, very, kind of clumsy. Yeah. And he even did that to an extent in WWE when he was there several years later.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I do like though with the old school War Games matches. I love the rules. Like instead of pins, it's just like submit or surrender. I think that's such a better stipulation for War Games.
Yeah, that is cool. I didn't even really think about that, but yeah, that is because that makes sense with the theme of it, right?
Like because anyone can get a pin on, really, even if it's just like a little like quick pin, in kayfabe, like a roll up or something. But to make someone submit or say surrender, that's like the ultimate victory, really. I think this is me going back to Bloodsport with the Kumite. It's like he made Tung Po. What's the name of the guy he fights at the end? It's not Tung Po, is it? Is it Tung Po? Forgot.
No, it's been a while. I forget.
Anyway, he makes him give up, and that was like the ultimate sign of like victory. And I like that's how it was for War Games. Like you can only lose the match by saying submit or surrender, and it's something I would like to see brought back today, actually.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. That really, like I said, it fits the theme of the match, and it makes it different than just another cage match.
Yeah.
But yeah, the match itself, first of all, it seemed pretty short because you brought up earlier.
It was.
When we were talking about the Hogan promo, you were like looking at the minutes like, okay, we're going to have an hour long War Games match, and that's kind of what I was expecting because that's what we've seen in NXT recently.
Yeah.
But it was like 2-minute intervals between people getting in the ring, so I guess that sped it up. I think the whole match was probably less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, like 5 minutes for the opening two and like 2 minutes each. And by the time like we'll get to it, Dusty comes in, it wasn't long till it was finished. Which, like, for the people what was in the ring, like the Nasty Boys and that, I didn't mind because we'll get to it. But when I watch a War Games match these days, they're good, but they do seem to drag on a bit too long. Like, there's only so many like 1 hour matches I can watch before I get bored.
I absolutely agree. I was actually dreading this match a little bit because, like you said,
Yeah.
it's so long and you can only hold your attention for so long, especially given the people in this match. Like, how long am I gonna watch fucking Bunkhouse Buck punch people?
Yeah,
You know?
when they started off with Dustin and Arn Anderson, I'm like, okay, we're okay.
Yeah. But man, yeah. So the match, I mean, I could go beat for beat in this match, but it was just utter chaos throughout the whole thing. My favorite part of it was Terry Funk.
Yeah.
Personally. He just comes in like a madman. He's like either the second or third guy for the heels that gets in there. He takes his boot off for some reason. He walks in with one boot. He's swinging it in the air. He's hitting people with it. He's in jeans. He's not even in wrestling tights. And at some point, he gets pile driven by Sags.
That's right.
Boys.
Yeah.
He gets pile driven in the middle of like in between the two rings. And like how nowadays they'll have like a little grate in between rings, but here they just had like a gap. And Funk gets pile driven like through the gap and is just like on the floor under the ring.
It was awesome.
You could tell he was having fun out there. But yeah, otherwise, just a lot of chaos, a lot of grinding against the cage, that kind of stuff. Entertaining. And I'm in hindsight, I'm kind of glad it didn't last too much longer than it did.
Yeah.
It felt right to me. But this whole match is basically all building to Colonel Parker getting his comeuppance.
That's right.
He's essentially the manager, the leader of the stud stable. He's not really a wrestler. Some people might associate him with Jeff Jarrett's manager in WWF a few years. But so I knew when I knew Fall Brawl 1994 was coming up in my timeline, I looked at the card and I knew nothing about anything that happened. However, the one thing I knew about this show was that Colonel Parker shits his pants in this match. I think they did a good job at hiding it, or I guess maybe Colonel Parker was just on the ground the whole time.
Yeah.
At some point, he just diarrheas in his white pants.
Well, I heard about it, but I didn't see it myself.
I was disappointed. I was expecting just a brown stain in the ring or something. But it could have been the ending segment that did it, because the finish comes with, as you said, Dusty's. He's the last one that gets in the ring. Bionic elbows for everybody. He's just laying everybody out, moving. Even at this stage in his career, he's moving around really quickly. And then locks in the figure 4 onto Colonel Parker. And as you said, someone has to surrender. So as Parker is in this figure 4, the Nasty Boys are both alternating elbow drops and splashes onto Parker. Really, really good stuff. Really like high energy. Like the crowd was loving it. It was a really good build to that moment. And that's ultimately where Colonel Parker surrenders for his team. And the old Rhodes Boys and the Nasty Boys win the match. And yeah, man, I think I keep wanting to say that pretty much ends the rivalry, but I don't even think it does. But yeah, pretty entertaining match for what it was. What did you think?
Yeah, when I saw the Nasty Boys, like, fair in the West, and I like the Nasty Boys, but they're not Steamboat and Austin.
Yeah.
But and when I was seeing the timer, and I'm thinking, oh, right, and and this match actually ended, and there was still 10 minutes of the pay-per-view left, pretty much. So I was actually surprised how quick it ended. But it was a short and sweet match, because I remember watching the War Games the year beforehand, and that's just like a bloodbath, which I recommend to anyone who watched it. And I actually spoke to Nikita Koloff about that match, and he was like, yeah, it was pretty bad, James.
Really?
Yeah, he was a great guy, by the way, but we spoke about that match. And but watching this one, like there were some good spots, like raking the faces towards the cage sides and that, and like the fact that Haku was out there and he was trying to get into the cage one way or another, and it was a good match, to be honest. I was pleasantly surprised. Like, I'm not saying it's a 5-star classic or anything like that by any means, and does it hold up to the stuff they do today? Probably not. But it was a short and sweet match, and it never dragged. That was the one thing. It never dragged. It got the job done. You knew who was taking the fall during this match. You was just waiting to see how it would. And, they locked in the figure 4. He was probably in there for like 30 seconds and before he surrendered, which is different to what you see today. I watched the last War Games match. I enjoyed it, but all of them would be in submission holds for like 5 minutes and they still don't submit, and it just pisses me off.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, those, like you said, those hour-long War Games matches, they have to bust out so many different spots that it's a certain point. It's just like, okay,
and
this match should be over.
And I missed the roof on the cage.
Was there a roof?
Yeah. There was always a roof on the WCW War Games matches, and it's quite a low roof as well. But I missed the roof. Now I know why they have it these days, because people likes to jump off, which can't have a match without jumping off the top. But I actually miss the roof, so it was nice to see the roof back on the cage as well.
Yeah, it definitely gave it a sense of like caged animals fighting. Yeah. That's why I hate the modern Hell in a Cell.
Oh yeah.
They made it bigger. I'm not even gonna touch the red color of it, but they just made it bigger, and so it's just like you're wrestling in a ring that just happens to be surrounded by a cage, basically.
Yeah, like I like this cage, like it's actually at the edge of the ring, so when you throw someone into the ropes, they're hitting the cage at the same time, instead of having a big 6-foot gap between the cage and the ring.
Yeah, and plus it's 1994, so you gotta question how safe this cage is and how well put together it is. It's always fun when you're watching a match and you could basically believe that the cage can collapse at any minute.
It's but yeah, like I said, I was pleasantly surprised by this match, so I actually enjoyed it. And I love at the end where, even though we're supposed to believe this was just a big violent match, Dustin Rhodes' theme's playing out, and all of a sudden you hear they call him a natural. It was just like completely like different to what we've just seen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was good stuff. And nobody would have even known that Colonel Parker shit his pants, but you hear good old Bobby Heenan as they're carrying him out. I forget what exactly he says, but I think he had an accident. Hilarious. But yeah, it pretty much brings the show to a close. As far as Fall Brawl 94, if you had to give it a rating out of 10, what do you think you'd give it?
Some good, like Regal and John B. Bad was good. The tag team match was okay. Sting match, it was good for the most part, but then towards the end it changed it for me. Mm-hmm. War Games match, I'll probably just say it's in the middle, but I would give it like a 5 out of 10. I would say it was just bang in the middle. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh, I definitely watch this match, but watch the show. But at the same time, I wouldn't be like, oh, avoid like the plague. I would be like, yeah, just when you've got some free time and you want to watch something a bit different, give this a watch.
Yeah, I'd probably give it more of like a 7 because, while there, if you look at it too analytically, you could probably find some holes in there, which is, to be expected. But like, if you're just watching it to watch it, it is a fun show to watch. And at no point does it really drag, in my opinion. Like the shitty stuff, they made it short. And and the Hogan promo and all that stuff. It was a lot of dumb fun, I think.
Yeah, it was it was good for what it was. So yeah, I was for someone who hasn't watched this era of WCW before, like I've heard like results and things like that, but to actually watch it, it was a pleasant surprise for me. And like, if this kind of content was on every week on TV, I would sit down and watch it, like compared to a lot of the stuff I try to avoid these days.
Yeah, exactly. But for anybody listening, if you enjoy these kind of 90s reviews, you will surely enjoy James and his That 90s Wrestling podcast. Tell everybody about what you're doing over there.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. Great time, and yeah, we've brought back the pay-per-view reviews, but it's a monthly special now, and we're basically just going in order from WrestleMania 6, which was the first WWE pay-per-view of the 90s, working our way forward. I've just released SummerSlam 91, which I enjoyed because it was one of my favorite shows as a child. So next episode coming out next month will be Survivor Series, but the main bread and butter of the show, I suppose, is the interviews. And it's took off since the last time we spoke. I've done quite a few now. It's really like we mentioned. Like I got the email from Nick Aldis when we done it, and like spoke to him, and it's still one of my favorite interviews. And in that time, like I spoke to more Impact Wrestling talent. Funny enough, like Deonna Purrazzo, Eric Young, and stuff. I've just spoke to ex-WWE stars like JTG from Crime Time, Elijah Burke I had on the show, Trevor Murdoch, Connor from The Ascension was a really good interview, and I've just released a video where I shared like a really funny story about Vince McMahon, about a rat gimmick, and this week I'll be releasing Doug Williams, and I've just mentioned I've just actually got an email from AEW, so I might be getting something with them soon.
Hell yeah.
At the minute, I'm keeping it top secret, but I'm working on something top secret, and if it happens, it'll literally be a dream come true. So,
no scoop on the apron bump.
Possibly. Oh no, I'll tell you. Hopefully, it's happened by then, but hopefully, I might be having some sort of a deal with WWE.
Oh, really? That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it'll be a dream come true for me. Like basically, having permission to interview their stars, and like them saying to me, like, if you want, do you want to speak to this guy or this girl this week? And I've just started working on it. It's early days yet, but hopefully, fingers crossed. That's me hashtag at the minute. Fingers crossed. And and if Mandy Rose comes on the show, I'll be pretty excited.
Hey, that's your in, man. You get her for an interview, you get her number, and then it's on from there.
Oh, if I wasn't married.
She doesn't need to know everything, right?
True.
But yeah, man, thanks again for coming on. And it's been a while. I think you were actually like my second guest I ever had on here.
Yeah, I felt it was pretty early on, yeah.
Yeah, so definitely we'll have you on here again. Everybody go check out James and his podcast. And yeah, man, thanks again for coming on.
Cool, thanks very much.
Once again, thank you to James from That 90s Wrestling Podcast. Once again, find him on YouTube or whatever podcast platform that you subscribe to. And all of his info in the description below. Really loved having him on. He was one of my, as we mentioned, one of my first guests. So it was fun to bring him back after some time had passed. And if you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, if you're a first-time listener, please do me a favor and subscribe. It'd be awesome if you could also leave a rating, review. Only good ones, though. If you don't like me, then go fuck yourself. Subscribe. We have some good stuff coming up in the next few weeks. So next Wednesday, we have Ring of Honor. Honor Invades Boston 2002. That'll be their first ever event outside of that Philly arena that they've been doing in that basketball court. Then after that, we have a debut on this podcast. We have ECW, November to Remember, 1994, their first ever event, big time event at least, under the Extreme Championship Wrestling banner. Then the week after that, we got Halloween Havoc. So we're back to WCW after that to kind of follow up on everything that happened in this episode. We got Progress Wrestling Chapter 10 after that. Keeping on rolling, everybody. We got lots of variety here, and I am hella enjoying it. So thank you guys so much for all the support that you've given this podcast. Really means a lot. Check me out on apronbump.com. Follow all my social medias in the description. Kiss your mom on the lips. That's all I got for you. Thank you guys once again for listening. I'm hard.
The hardest, walk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud, nothing can knock it. Let's get it started. It's the hardest. Talk around, don't disregard it. Strip you off the ground, show you what heart is. Standing strong and proud.